Hello guys, what is up? It is WrestleMania here, back with another video. There's something you guys need to know. I love facts, mostly about wrestling, but even more so, I love facts on wrestling video games. Over time, there has been a substantial number of wrestling video games, with some of them being completely different games from the start of development. In this video, we're going to look at the what could have beens of wrestling video games. So sit back and enjoy as we go through 13 interesting facts you may not have known about wrestling video games. Number 13. Most wrestling game appearances. Taker has done it all in wrestling. Not only has he dominated the WWE, but also wrestling video games. In fact, Taker is the only wrestler in history to be featured in over 50 wrestling video game titles. From his first appearance on WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge in 1992, he has appeared on even stranger and obscure games such as Fire Pro Wrestling Premium X, WWF Betrayal, right up to his newest featuring on the new WWE 2K17 game, which makes his tally to 51 games, and that's not even counting how many variations of Taker there were on each game. Number 12. WCW and NWO Live. From what is understood, THQ had two games in development in 1998, one being WCW and NWO Revenge for the PlayStation, and the other would be WCW NWO Live for the Nintendo 64. Somewhere though during the stages of development, both the titles were switched, and what we got instead was Revenge for the N64, and Live was actually set to be for the PlayStation. And get this, it was gonna actually be made with the Smackdown engine. Magazine and internet articles were published showing Live being ready to be released in fall of 1998. The game was unfortunately sat on though, as the WCW license was expiring with THQ. WCW then left THQ in favour of EA, where we got WCW Mayhem, and THQ and Ukes ended up making Smackdown specifically for the PlayStation. Number 11. No Mercy's Game Boy Color Championship Mode. Yes, one of the biggest and best N64 wrestling titles was going to be made for the Game Boy Color. Originally, the N64 game was supposed to have a transfer pack functionality to take your created wrestler from the Game Boy Color version over to the N64 version. Once a Game Boy Color version was scrapped, so was the mode. The mode, however, can still be accessed easily through a GameShark code and a few steps with cloning your wrestler. When that has occurred, it is then listed in the championship options, and it consists of 8 matches with no branching paths, and your player character plays no role in the plot. An additional fact is that No Mercy was actually originally intended to have full entrances like WrestleMania 2000, but they were cut out for some unknown reason. It's speculated though that this was either due to cartridge space or they were just very glitchy. Number 10. WWF 98. WWF Warzone was the first 3D WWF title to be released. Aesthetically, it looked a lot different, and originally titled to be WWF 98, it had a much more WrestleMania arcade game theme with the American flags and no Attitude Red ropes. There are some screenshots of the game in early beta. There was also a video floating around on YouTube years ago, but it now seems to have disappeared, of a beta version. It seems though that Warzone went through a number of variations through development, as there's also another beta that looks much different to both the completed version and the WWF 98 version. Check it out. Number 9. Smackdown Here Comes the Pain's roster. Originally, Smackdown Here Comes the Pain's roster was going to be a lot bigger, with the inclusion of Jeff Hardy, modern and 80s version of Hulk Hogan, Mr. America, and for the first time in the Smackdown series, the Ultimate Warrior. In 2 early trailers and footage of the game, you can clearly see that they were going to be in the game, but since Jeff was released from the company that year, Hogan also had a falling out with the WWE, and Warrior could not be included due to legal reasons. They were all cut out just before the game's release. Data also exists on the HTTP disk for the following wrestlers: Spike Dudley, Billy Kidman, Billy Gunn, William Regal, Bradshaw, Molly Holly, and 3 Minute Warning. Possibly not enough time to include them all. Number 8. Raw 2's Removed Wrestlers. Raw 2 for the Xbox also included Jeff Hardy and Scott Hall to be in the game. Again, they can both be seen in early trailers of the game, but were cut out mostly due to them being released just before the release of the game. Number 7. A one-time only appearance. The Legends of Wrestling series was Acclaim's decent attempt at making past wrestling legends heroes again. Even though the series is no more, it featured a number of wrestlers who have never appeared in any other licensed wrestling video game: Don Morocco, Tony Atlas, Tito Santana, Ivan Koloff, One Man Gang, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Harley Race, Dynamite Kid, Captain Lou Albano, the Von Erichs, Ivan Putski, Rocky Johnson, the Grand Wizard, Andy Kaufman, Baron Von Raschke, Bob Backlund, Killer Kowalski, Paul Ondorf, Mil Mascaras, Nikita Koloff, and in the European versions, it also included Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, Mick McManus, and Kendo Nagasaki. Number 6. Barbed wire matches and crowd fighting. Speaking of the Legends of Wrestling series, prior to its release, it was rumored to have barbed wire matches and in-crowd fighting, which were features carried over from their previous game, ECW Anarchy Rules. Just remember that before ECW's bankruptcy, Acclaim was the last company to have the ECW license, so who knows what was in the works at the time. Number 5. A Chikara game exists. The game is called Rudo Resurrection, and it was first announced in April 2010 for multiple platforms, including the PC, PS3 and Xbox 360. I hate to be a buzzkill though, but it's not actually a wrestling video game. It's actually a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up which utilizes the wrestlers from the promotion and is set in a futuristic cyber world. Quoting from an interview in 2014 on Press to Reset, the developer wants to promote a fast-paced combat that mixes signature moves from the Chikara wrestlers with the action controls of a side-scrolling brawler video game. It was in development for 4 years until Rotary Games had been given the rights to the game, and I say was because no progress seems to have been made on the game since its funding was deemed unsuccessful on a Kickstarter. The project's funding goal was $50,000 but only managed to raise $18,765. The project is still listed on Steam's Greenlight, but there has been no update from the game or developers since 2014. Hopefully it could be revived in the near future, as it does look to be a cool game. Number 4. WWE Fighting Games. WWE All-Stars was a wrestling game that featured a different aesthetic to most wrestling games. It featured bulky, over-the-top proportioned WWE legends and current wrestlers. Well, this wasn't going to be the only game to feature them. THQ had planned on releasing 2 games, both WWE Titans Parts Unknown by Next Level Games and WWE Brawl. Titans was going to be one of those one-on-one fighting games and was planned for release on both the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, but it was cancelled for some unknown reasons. There were a number of concept drawings and the game was going to concentrate heavily on destructible environments. In 2009, WWE Brawl also had the same concept and even went so far as to being completed about 80%, with being in development for over 2 years. It was being developed by Australian developers Blue Tongue. Those who worked with the company had told that WWE had big plans for the series, and it was going to have both merchandise and a TV show tie-in. There was a video showing off what the game could do, and it looks pretty fun, and various concept drawings included Mecha Vince. The only reason given for the cancellation was mismanagement, and the studio could have completed the game had it not been for THQ's intervention. Number 3. Legal rights. When Fire Pro Wrestling and Final Fire Pro Wrestling were released on the Game Boy Advance, they had to feature a heavily modified octagon ring and recolored wrestlers. At the time, this was said to be due to pressure from both UFC and WWE. Going forward, the Fire Pro games no longer featured imitation defaults of contracted WWE wrestlers, in fear of legal trouble. Number 2. Smackdown games cursed? There have been 2 unfortunate and coincidental incidents in the Smackdown series, and eerily enough it was one after the other. The first being Smackdown vs Raw 2006 on Chapter 2 of the story mode with The Undertaker called Earning Your Respect. Playing as The Undertaker, you face Eddie Guerrero, who has stolen his urn, and in return Eddie can now control whatever The Undertaker does. Eventually you get the urn back, but in the end of the chapter, Taker chokeslams Eddie into the casket and it slams shut. On the 15th of October 2005, only 2 days after the release of the game, Eddie was found dead. Similarly enough, in Smackdown vs Raw 2007, playing as Taker again in Chapter 1 called The Rabid Wolverine and the Dead Man, you're caught in the middle of a feud between Benoit and Taker. During a backstage cutscene in the game, Benoit confronts Undertaker and they have an exchange of words. Undertaker then says something like this.
I'm sick of you ducking me, Undertaker. You know I'm the most dominant superstar in Smackdown, and you know you can't prove me wrong.
You think I'm afraid of you, little man? I can't count the number of superstars who have tested themselves against the dead man and come up short. If you insist on making this mistake, then your grieving family will have no one to blame but you when the inevitable occurs.
Then on June 25, 2007, murdered both his wife and son and killed himself. I don't necessarily believe in curses, but it does seem like a very creepy coincidence. Number 1. WCW Mayhem 2 or WCW 2000. Whatever you want to call it, it was going to be the successor to the then WCW Mayhem by EA. The game was actually rumored to have been developed by Akai for the Sony PlayStation 2. It boasted of having well over 1,000 moves and branching storylines similar to the Smackdown series. A new load of match types were also introduced like First Blood and Gauntlet. There was an article published in the PSM magazine showing off the incredible graphics and new technology to scan wrestlers. It also included what was the weapons and environments it would include. It's strange to say, but it looks like more of a successor to WCW Backstage Assault, and we all know how shitty that game was. Unfortunately, the game never saw the light of day, as during its development, a little problem occurred, just the WWF purchasing it. With that, EA had no ongoing license with the WWF, and instead the engine was used for Def Jam Vendetta. Well guys, that about wraps up this video here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you can like, comment and subscribe, that would be awesome. And I'll see you next time for some more wrestling content.